It's easy to look at the mastabas, which were Egypt's first grand tombs, and see this as several mastabas stacked, each slightly smaller than the last. In fact, in my own video about mastabas, that's exactly how I inferred the development of the pyramids happened. And that's not a lie, but this pyramid is not several of these stacked, and probably couldn't be. Though the layers of the pyramid look like mastabas at a glance, in fact the two are made of very different materials. While the mastaba is made almost entirely of mud bricks, the pyramid is made out of stone. This iconic pyramid was built as a memorial to the 3rd dynasty pharaoh Djoser. I said memorial rather than tomb because, unlike the much larger pyramids we tend to think of, Djoser's didn't have much going on inside it. Like the mastabas, it rested atop an underground tomb. By the way, Djoser is the name I'll be using to refer to this pharaoh, since I want to give you all something to research around, and that's what Egyptologists call him. As far as I know, however, that name dates to more than 1,000 years after his death. In his own time, he was called Netcherichet, meaning divine-bodied. The name Djoser, which is best translated as Sacred One, shows up around the Middle Kingdom and may have been in reference to legends that came to surround him, including that he so honoured the gods that he staved off a devastating famine. The pyramid was part of a nearly 40-acre religious complex, including tombs for Djoser's family members, mortuary shrines, and spaces for the king having returned from the afterlife to continue to perform his ceremonial duties. The pyramid itself, like the larger pyramids of the Giza Plateau, looks a little more humble than it once did. There are primarily 3 forms of stone used in its construction. Internally, its walls are supported by stone rubble filled in with clay and sand, essentially a very crude concrete. Externally, visible to the most casual observer today, are these limestone bricks. They're pretty regular in shape, though they're designed for structural stability rather than appearance. Both these bricks and the rubble used to support the structure internally are likely taken from the natural stone of the local area. Largely gone now are the outer casing stones, though we can get some idea of their appearance from the enclosure wall because both were made of Tura limestone, a paler, shinier limestone used for its ability to sparkle somewhat in sunlight. Tura is just south of Cairo, as is Saqqara, where the pyramid is built. In fact, if you stood atop the pyramid, you could probably spot the quarry in the distance on a clear day. The trouble is, they're on opposite sides of the Nile, and given that most construction would be done when labour was available, during the flood months, it was a very wide Nile indeed. The outer casing stones would have been much larger than those used to build the pyramids, so transporting them across the broad river will have presented unique challenges and required an appreciation for the principles of buoyancy. These days, we attribute the logistical triumphs of the pyramid and its overall design to the royal minister Imhotep, but this is very much an inference. Imhotep was very successful, being a trusted minister, famous physician, and high priest to the god Ra, who was both the supreme deity at this time and the deity whom pharaohs had just recently started calling themselves the sons of. After his own death, Imhotep was deified as a god of medicine, and in later ages was sometimes considered to have been a living aspect of Thoth, the god of intellectual pursuits such as medicine, mathematics, and writing. Even beyond the end of the Age of Pharaohs, Imhotep remained a figure of legend, as late on as the 2nd century CE, he's attributed not only with the construction of Djoser's pyramid, but with being a wizard who engaged in a victorious sorcerous duel with an Assyrian witch, and of course, what name would eventually be given to the eponymous mummy of Universal's monster-based cinematic universe, but Imhotep. There is no contemporary evidence that Imhotep was the architect of the Step Pyramid or that he was the first human to employ stone in constructions this large, but even so, later he would even be credited as the first person ever to use stone columns as structural supports. But never, even when he was popular as a deity and a heroic figure from Egypt's past, did the ancient Egyptians ever credit him with these things. Perhaps this is because Djoser himself was credited with the vision needed to construct the pyramid. On the other hand, I can also see no evidence conflicting with the attestation that he was a powerful wizard, but he wouldn't have been fighting an Assyrian sorceress, not as early as the 3rd dynasty, that's just silly. Back to the pyramid, it's clear that there was a vision for what the pyramid was meant to be, but that it was experimental. The foundation of the pyramid began as a square which no mastaba had ever been. It was enlarged at several points and was rectangular for a time, which has caused some Egyptologists to speculate that the project was almost abandoned in favour of a stone mastaba, but eventually construction went ahead. Unlike the mastabas, which were built in horizontal layers of bricks, much as bricks are laid to this day, the courses of the step pyramid were actually sloped vertical accretion layers built from the centre outwards. Step pyramids didn't last long as a trend in Egypt. Fairly soon, smooth-faced pyramids would take over, culminating in the Great Pyramid, and later pyramids would mimic this rather than the stepped construction allegedly envisaged by Imhotep. Were the steps a logistical necessity to limit the mass of the structure? Was there symbolism involved that is now lost to us? For now, the true purpose of the step pyramid remains unsolved. The step pyramid of Djoser may have been the first man-made stone structure on that scale. Certainly it's one of the earliest, though the town of Caral in modern-day Peru was built at a similar time and featured pyramid-like temple structures. These were nowhere near as tall as Djoser's pyramid, but the construction was extensive and on a similar scale to Djoser's funerary complex. It's the intricacy of the construction and the implied social and economic power of these ancient governments, I think, that should impress us rather than the brute facts of the tonnage of the stacked blocks or how many blocks were used. Acquiring the stone, transporting it, feeding and paying the number of workers required to get it built, all of these imply a government of tremendous power. And governments of tremendous power aren't always to be admired, but still, Djoser's pyramid started something. It was the first Egyptian pyramid, it marked a new burial site for future kings, and it cemented Djoser's place as the son of Ra, destined for immortality among the stars, which every future pharaoh would aspire to. What other iconic Egyptian structure do you want me to take a look at? I'm not doing them in order, so feel free to suggest something from later on. On the one hand, it seems natural to look at the Great Pyramid next, but I think maybe I'll take a look at something military, one of the great fortresses of the Middle Kingdom. But next week, something completely different. Until then, my fellow armchair Egyptologists, life, prosperity, and health to you all. Thanks for watching. Head over to my channel for more, or click here to see what the YouTube demons think you should watch next. I hope you'll consider subscribing. If you'd like to support and collaborate on the channel with me, go to patreon.com/armchairegypt. You can also join my Discord community, there's an invite link in the description.